to a new episode of Breaking Into Tech. I'm so excited to have Alley here, not only because she's a graduate, but she also works at Sabio, so we get to do both sides of the spectrum and talk about her time going through the bootcamp program and the work she's doing today. So welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So let's start with a little bit about you. Tell us about your background. Do you have any military service and just who you are?
Yeah, so I grew up in Texas. I was born to two military parents. At the time, my dad was active duty Air Force and he was stationed in Spain. And then we came back to Texas for him to finish up his service. And then my mom joined later on. So I kind of grew up in that kind of environment. So I ended up joining the Navy a little bit later in life. I was 23 when I joined, and I served 6 years as an electronics technician.
Wow, so you have a lot of military connections.
Yeah,
Your dad, your mom, and then you
and a
served.
brother as well. A
So
Marine.
lots of
So,
military.
yeah.
Yeah. And what is the work of, you said electronic, now I forgot it.
Electronics technician. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was gonna say. Electronics technician.
Primarily repair of radios and radars and things of that nature.
Cool. So when you left the Navy, is that when you headed to Sabio, or what drew you to head over and look into Sabio?
So not immediately after, I completed my service in 2017. And from there, I worked as a contractor for the government for a little while, both as a government employee and as a civilian contractor, kind of doing something similar to what I was in the Navy as an electronics technician, but it was definitely much more like hardware based. And then I've slowly started to kind of work my way into software and then now into development. Um, that's kind of the background of that.
Yeah, and so what led you to make that career switch? It sounds like you're doing it in the Navy and then you did it after. What made you want to change?
It's been just sort of a slow process. Before I joined the military, I was very mechanical. I really enjoy cars and working on cars. And from at that point, I was not willing to touch anything electronic on my car. I was terrified. Um, And then when I joined the Navy, I intended to be a fire controlman, actually, which is completely different. There are similarities between the two. It's kind of a program that branches off and you're either one or the other. And I expected to be able to choose. And so it was kind of a surprise whenever they were like, oh, you're not going to be a fire controlman. You're going to be an electronics technician. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm terrified. Can I do this electronics thing? I wasn't a very technical person. I was definitely more a mechanical person. And so I got into that from there kind of forcibly, if you will, because of the military. And then I've just sort of grown an interest in it over time. And I met my husband in the Navy, and he was also an electronics technician. And after he got out, he immediately got into software development and was a graduate of Sabio. So we're now a dual Sabio graduate family. Um, so he was kind of putting little bugs in my ear a little bit. He thought it would be something I'd be good at. I was kind of adjacent where I was with my job. At the time, I was in software integration. And so I was just right there on the edge. I had kind of moved from working on the more hardware side of things, kind of walking my way into software from that job, and then was like, I think I could do this. I think I could maybe be a developer. And with him in my ear as well, it was just kind of all right, I'll give it a shot and see if it's something I'm interested in.
So he was kind of helping push you to consider it, and
Yes.
then so had he graduated by the time that you had started, or was he in the
Yeah.
program?
A couple of years ago, actually. So I think he was cohort 57, 56 or 7, and I was 119. So kind of a gap there, a couple of years of gap in
Yeah.
between the two of us. So
Yeah. So you learned about it from your husband because he was in the program, but did you go to any specific like info sessions to learn more, or did you do research on the internet? Were there anything besides your husband's encouragement that led you to decide to do the program?
yeah, I did. So while I knew that he had been to Sabio. It had been a few years, and obviously Sabio has changed so much since then. There's been a ton of growth. So I did do my own research. I did attend an info session, and that's actually how I learned about the VET TEC program. I was fully planning on using my GI Bill like my husband did, and that put the bug in my ear even more because I was like, man, if I can just keep saving my GI Bill to keep going to school, because I am working on a BS in computer technology as well. I was like, if I don't have to use my GI Bill for that and I can use VET TEC, like that's excellent. So then I did some more research into VET TEC, and while going through all of that stuff and looking into VET TEC and what VET TEC even was, I hadn't even heard of it as a veteran myself. And going through and looking and seeing that Sabio was a VET TEC preferred provider, I was like, okay, great. So I've already got, that behind me. I've had this info session. My husband's already been, and now the VA is backing Sabio. So it's like, excellent. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, you're not the first person to talk about the fact that the VA recommends them through the VET TEC program, and I think I had heard of VET TEC, but I had no idea what it was until I started doing those interviews, and I was like, "Oh, this is a really cool program,"
It
and then
really
there's lots
is.
of yeah.
I'm surprised that so many vets don't know about it because it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's something that all veterans should know about, especially if you still have your GI Bill and you're trying to figure out what you wanna do. You have this whole other avenue that you can explore, and you don't even have to use your GI Bill benefits. You just have
Yeah,
to have 1
absolutely.
day left on your GI
Exactly.
Bill.
It's great.
Yeah. So, what did you learn from the program at Sabio?
Oh my gosh, that would be to try to sum up 17 weeks of training is like near impossible, but um, everything. Obviously, the field of software development is so vast. There are so many different avenues that you can choose to go down, and I think that's what attracts me to it so much is the variety of things that you can do. But essentially, you are a full stack developer. You learn everything that you need to know to get yourself started into the front end, the middle tier, and the back end. And have experience working with APIs and just such a well-rounded, that puts you in such a well-rounded position that you can kind of go off in any one of those directions.
Yeah, I talked to Meg Black a few weeks ago, and she talked about how it's like you make a cake and then you make the cake pretty. And I really liked how she explained it because I think that shows the value of the program that it's not just you you will learn how to do the behind the scenes. You learn how to do like the front end, the back end, the middle,
Mhm.
all the parts of it, and then that gives you more opportunity for job opportunities, and it gives you like just a more general wealth of knowledge and lots of opportunities that can stem from it because you're not pigeonholed into one area.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, that cake analogy is great because you may be the person who makes the whole cake, makes the whole batter, bakes the cake, assembles the cake, decorates the cake, or you might just be the person decorating the cake. And Sabio puts you in a great position because you know what it's like to bake the cake, to create the batter, you know what it's like to ice the cake, and then you know what it's like to decorate the cake. So you've got that whole wide range of things, and maybe you hate making the cake and all you want to do is decorate it, or vice versa, right? Or maybe a healthy mix of both. Maybe you get in with a startup that you're the only engineer and or the only developer, and you have to make the whole cake from scratch. And so you're in the opportunity where you can do whatever you want in that case.
Yeah, and you get to try it all and when you go and talk to job when you do interviews in the back
Mhm.
end when you graduate, you know that what parts you like, what parts you don't, and like you can focus on that when you're
Mhm.
trying to get a job.
What your
Yeah.
strong suits are exactly, or what you
Yeah,
like. You might be great at the front end, but not necessarily like it. So
very true. So, what kind of projects did you build with your cohort?
I got to work on a project called Cart, and it's the best way I can describe it is kind of a COVID inspired digital menu service. Is that, once you don't want to touch all the menus, and the digital ordering platforms all have these kind of great menus already, but we want to be able to bring those to people in restaurants where you can look at a menu in the restaurant, like on your phone or an app or whatever the case may be, that you don't have to like share a menu with somebody with those germs and all that kind of stuff. But then also there's an added element of almost like a rating process a little bit. So, or even just the photos of the meals on the menu. It allows the customer to take a picture of the food and then allows the restaurant to go, okay, this is a great representation of this meal. We'll add this to the menu. So then not only do you have this great digital menu, you also have a visual representation of what that food's going to look like, which you don't always have in most cases, or not every menu has a picture of every single item because then you're going to end up with like, a book.
Really long.
So in this case, now you have that, there's less waste with the menus, there's less germs being spread around, and then now you have these great representations of all of your food items.
Yeah, that sounds like a great project, and I love that it involves the customer by taking the photos, and, like, that's also, like, not wasting food because you have pictures of food that people are gonna eat instead of having
Mhm.
to, like, take pictures just to have them on the menu, and so that sounds like a great program. So, when you were about to graduate from the boot camp program, how did you go about finding a job?
Oh my gosh. It was a process of just, we were all set up into groups and we all kind of started to write our first drafts of our resumes together. And we kind of went over them with our instructors and with each other and kind of tweaked them here and there until I think we ended up going through 3 rounds of resumes until we finally got our perfect resume. And then we started to just kind of fire them off. Like in, I think the first week, gosh, I can't even remember, like several hundred resumes I was sending off, just a massive amount. And I honestly can't recommend that enough. I ended up working with Sabio, but the fellows that I was with in my cohort that were sending off like massive amounts of resumes were getting responses back. The people that were just, not sending out very many, kind of maybe still haven't even heard back, but there is definitely something to be said about that kind of massive attack, so to speak.
Yeah, so it's a lot of work not only to complete the program, but also to find a job. It's
Absolutely. You have to put in that work.
yeah. Which you've already shown that you can because Sabio is a lot it's an intense program for 17 weeks, so just
Absolutely.
focus on getting that last few weeks even though you're tired, but you wanna get that job.
Yeah, it's called a boot camp for a reason, for sure, and I think a lot of, military members can kind of relate to that. Even the Navy boot camp wasn't even quite that long, and obviously that's a different form of stress, but there are different forms of stress with Sabio. Your first 4 weeks are very stressful, and then each new section is a different form of stress. Then once you get to the job search, that's a whole new form of stress. So it kind of puts you through the ringer a little bit, which is a perfect name for a boot camp.
So, where did you land after you graduated? You said you were sending out lots of interviews and hearing back from people, but where did you end up getting a job at?
With Sabio.
Okay. And so, was that something you expected, or how did that happen?
Not at all. It had been a couple of weeks since I graduated. The first week after I graduated, I ended up getting really sick. And so I was sick for the whole week. I was still sending out resumes. I did a couple of interviews here or there, but I was really, really sick. And so I didn't do just a whole ton of interviews. And then the second week, I had a really awful interview. I hadn't had an interview like that before in my life, and I just kind of froze, and I think that's to be expected. I expected to have maybe dozens of interviews until I got comfortable with that kind of interview. The technical interview is such a different process than any other interview I've ever experienced, and while Sabio does prep you for that with the training and all of that, there's something to be said about the nerves that you might get, like, as a human being that you need to kind of work on yourself. And so Gregorio had actually reached out to me and asked me how my interviewing process had been going. And I kind of told him, everything that had happened and about that bad interview I had, and that I wasn't going to let it get to me, and that I was going to keep on pushing. And he kind of was like, well, how would you like to have a job here at Sabio? And I jumped at the opportunity. I think it will give me the perfect opportunity to continue just solidifying everything that I learned while I was there, get the experience. And also, I really enjoy working with people like the students that I was working with in my cohort. It's such a joy to be able to explain something to somebody, especially in code, where it clicks and you can see that light in their eyes whenever they get that concept. Sometimes it just takes somebody explaining it in a different way, like that cake analogy is perfect. Sometimes it takes, like, at least for me, a real world example of something or a physical example of something to understand. And so being able to do that for students is excellent for me.
Yeah, so what exactly are you doing with Sabio?
So Sabio has a something called a queue. And so if you need help, if you are going through a lesson and you don't understand what's going on, or you just want to talk about the code that you're writing to make sure that you fully understand it, you can hop on the queue. You have a little form you have to fill out that says, hey, I need help, or hey, I want to get a code review. And a live person hops in, answers your questions, talks you through the code. And that's what I do. I'm that person that gets to answer those calls and help people out.
Wow, that sounds like a great resource because sometimes, like you said, you just need someone to explain it different or like show you where you made your mistake. And I know I've talked to people and they say the only way you can really learn coding is by making mistakes and then
Mhm.
learning what you did wrong. So to the fact that they have a team of people who are there to jump in and help students as they have problems and they don't have to do it alone is really a great
Oh,
resource.
absolutely. And I don't think there are any other programs that really do that, at least in this way that we do.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, um, yeah, so I lost my place. Uh, what you were talking about interviews, and then we started talking about the work that you're doing with Sabio, but
Mhm.
is there any advice that you would go back and give yourself when thinking about preparing for the interviews, like how to overcome those nerves or what you would have done differently? I mean, you got sick, so it kind of messed you up, but
Yeah, a little bit, but that's to be seen. If you go for 17 weeks and you're high stress, your body kind of takes a toll on your body a little bit. So it's expected that you might get sick here or there. But I would say for me, it was just a level of stress where I just kind of forget my own name. And what I ended up doing after that really, really bad interview was make a plan before each interview where I take, 15 or 20 minutes before and just kind of listen to some calming music or meditate or whatever it is you have to do to kind of center yourself and give yourself like kind of a self-talk. I think there's a little bit of imposter syndrome that comes with this job and a lot of jobs, and especially for women, where you kind of doubt yourself. You're like, am I really a developer? Am I really is intelligent enough to do this job? Many other questions just to yourself, and just remind yourself like, hey, I've done this. I can do this. I built this. I participated in this program. I am, just that self-positive talk and just kind of reassure yourself.
yeah, I think that's really good advice to take like 15, 20 minutes before the interview and allow yourself to get in the right mindset and to remind yourself, like, I graduated from this program. I know what I'm doing. I've built this program through the cohort and I'm ready and I can do this because yeah, it gets overwhelming and I feel like it's just really hard to do interviews in general and then you say a tech interview and that just gives you
Mhm.
like more uptightness and like
Yeah,
nervousness, and so I love that advice. I think that's really good just to give yourself positive words of affirmations and calming music to get you in the right state of mind so that you can go and tackle the interview. That sounds like great
absolutely.
advice.
And there's other things that you can do to prepare yourself. A lot of the times, it's not like a surprise what you're interviewing for. If they say, here are the frameworks that we use, you can go and study that the night before. Again, the interviews aren't a surprise. You know exactly what day they are, what time they are. Give yourself ample time to study and refresh on some things. It's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot. It's so deep, so vast. And then also remember that your interviewers are human beings. They've been in your position before, most of them. Maybe not your initial interviews. Usually those are with some like an HR rep or something in that case. But usually your second round interviews or third round interviews are with developers like you who have been a new developer, a junior developer, and understand that you're going to maybe need a little bit of assistance or patience or whatever the case may be, because there are nerves that come along with that. So you just have to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, just remember that you're a human, they're human, and, like, mistakes are just part of it, and just to keep moving forward. I think that's
Yeah.
excellent advice.
And you wouldn't be in that interview seat if they didn't wanna talk to you and they weren't interested in hiring you.
Yeah. It sounds like the words of affirmations are really coming out of, like, stuff that you know now,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and it's just something you need to remember when you're graduating, that you have done the training, you've graduated from the program, you've got the certification, and now you just need to believe in yourself and do your best.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what advice would you give someone who's considering a career in software engineering?
I would say give yourself some time to research into it, see exactly what it is. Maybe take some or watch some videos online or take a couple courses here or there. I took a couple of like HTML, CSS courses just to see if it was even something that I would like. Just do a little bit of research, see if it's your thing. There is such a diversity in the students that I see come through the program. There are teachers who are looking to get out of that industry, nurses, people like me who have a little bit of background, people that, may not have very much tech experience at all, who exceed and do wonderful in the program. So it's one of those things that, anybody can do, but it may not be your cup of tea. So just look into it and see if that's something that interests you. Just do a little bit of study on it.
Yeah, so do some research to see if you're interested in it, and that because it's a big commitment, 17 weeks
Absolutely.
and long hours and lots of hard work and stress, and so it's not something you should just be like, "I'm sure I'll
Take
like it."
lightly. Yeah, I'll just wing it. It'll be fine. And, there are people that do that too and exceed as well. So, I'm personally a very big planner. I don't like to fly by the seat of my pants, but there are those people that do and do succeed. So, if you're a person like me, though, I would highly suggest looking into it, seeing if it's something that you're interested in.
Yeah. Yeah, they people have talked about you could be novice or you can have some coding skill, and I think I like your idea though. If you take a little bit of time, learn a bit about code, and figure out if you like it or if it just is like completely overwhelming and you're like, I
Mhm.
don't like this. I
Yeah.
think that's great. But yes, do whatever works best for you, because some people don't want to do
Some
that.
people are spontaneous.
Yeah. So, where do you see yourself in 2 to 5 years, and would you ever consider starting your own tech startup?
Oh my gosh. That would be amazing. My husband and I have talked about like if we come up with some really cool idea for something we want to build, that would be amazing. Personally, I don't feel like I have the background and the smarts for business to just, kind of launch something off the ground and do that kind of thing. But, you know, I think it would be really fun. I think it would be really cool to work for a cool startup that maybe, already has that kind of background and knowledge and funding. And then I get to just be kind of in my foot in the door team. That would be great. That would be really fun. Personally, I honestly don't know, and I'm kind of excited to see where I am in the next 2 to 5 years. I have been so, I've had such a very strict background, not background, that's not the right word that I'm looking for, but I've always had this very set path plan where I'm gonna be every morning, every day. So I'm kind of excited to see where I go and where this journey takes me. So I really don't know.
Yeah. And how long have you been at Sabio?
So I started the program in June, graduated in October, and then started working for Sabio just a couple of weeks after
Uh-huh.
graduation.
Yeah, so you're still pretty new,
Still pretty young.
getting your feet under
Yeah,
you and figuring out where you're going forward.
exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really loved getting to hear your experience, a little bit about who you are and what led you to become a software engineer, and now the work that you're doing at Sabio.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.